Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for joining our live stream today. We will be starting the program with a recitation of Quran. Let's welcome Salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الذين لا يرجون لقاءنا ورضوا بالحياة الدنيا واطمأنوا بها والذين هم عن آياتنا غافلون أولئك مأواهم النار بما كانوا يكسبون. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات يهديهم ربهم بإيمانهم تجري من تحتهم الأنهار في جنات النعيم دعواهم فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها سلام وآخر دعواهم عن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون وما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن يقنت منكن لله ورسوله وتعمل صالحا نؤتها أجرها مرتين وأعتدنا لها رزقا كريما. يا نساء النبي لستن كأحد من النساء إن اتقيتن فلا تخضعن بالقول فيطمع الذي في قلبه مرض وقلن قولا معروفا وقرن في بيوتكن ولا تبرجن تبرج الجاهلية الأولى وأقمنا الصلاة وآتينا الزكاة وأطعنا الله ورسوله إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. واذكرن ما يتلى في بيوتكن من آيات الله والحكمة إن الله كان لطيفا خبيرا. إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله ورسوله أمرا أن يكون لهم الخيرة من أمرهم، ومن يعص الله ورسوله فقد ضل ضلالا مبينا. وإذ تقول للذي أنعم الله عليه وأنعمت عليه أمسك عليك زوجك واتق الله وتخفي في نفسك ما الله مبديه وتخشى الناس والله أحق أن تخشاه. فلما قضى زيد منها وطرا زوجناكها لكي لا يكون على المؤمنين حرج في أزواج أدعيائهم إذا قضوا منهن وطرا، وكان أمر الله مفعولا. ما كان على النبي من حرج فيما فرض الله له، سنة الله في الذين خلوا من قبل، وكان أمر الله قدرا مقدورا. الذين يبلغون رسالات الله ويخشونه ولا يخشون أحدا إلا الله، وكفى بالله حسيبا. ما كان محمد أبا أحد من رجالكم ولكن رسول الله وخاتم النبيين، وكان الله بكل شيء عليما. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا وسبحوه بكرة وأصيلا. هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور، وكان بالمؤمنين رحيما. تحيتهم يوم يلقونه سلام وأعد لهم أجرا كريما. يا أيها النبي إنا أرسلناك شاهدا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا. وبشر المؤمنين بأن لهم من الله فضلا كبيرا.
Now, just a note that it will be a couple of minutes before we start the main program, so please do stay on as we get everything ready for Sheikh Arif's talk.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Again, I'm going to have to start by asking if you can please come to the front, as many of you as possible. Perfect. Thank you. Again, just some ground rules. When exiting, please exit one row at a time. Please use hand sanitizers at the entrance. Avoid gathering, and tabarruk will be served at the end of the program at the back. Q&A, again, please go to sheikarf.com/live. Contactless donations can be given at the back of the hall or at almahdi.edu/donate. Tonight's program is sponsored on behalf of the marhumin displayed on the TV screens. Please can we recite a Surah Fatiha for these and all other marhumin. Please can we welcome Sheikh with a loud salawat.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وأهله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. So the verse of the Quran states, الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. He has created death and life in order to test you and to see which of you is the best of deeds. Now if we look at this verse, we see that between the parameters of death and life is the full struggle of humankind. We are constantly trying to overcome death and lack. And we are succeeding. We are fulfilling our fullness of the fullness of our human potential by trying to defeat lack, by trying to defeat death. And in that we are displaying the nature of God. In our bodily constitution and the way our minds and brains work, by trying to overcome lack and defeat, we are becoming God-like. In fact, existentially, we cannot do anything but to reflect our God within our nature, whether we like it or not. We are vested with the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God knows no rest. It knows no death. It knows no lack. We feel lack, we feel challenge, we overcome it. We become better than it. This is the dynamism that is within us. There is nothing that is there within the nature of God, but that we have within our nature and we display it. Whether we want to or not, our return is to God. We display Him so phenomenally in every way we are. As Rumi said, and we bring that to mind again, that, oh man, in your denial of God is your acceptance of God. When you flee from God, you arrive at God. In your poses, in your stagnation, in your motion, in your words, it is nothing but a display of your own author. If God is the author of paradise, then that bodily paradise, we ourselves will author it. If God cures sickness, we will cure sickness. If God creates light, we will create light. We are infused with that beautiful nature of God that knows no arrest and knows no rest. It cannot be stopped, it cannot be arrested, it will move on. Even without knowing, we are displaying God in this beautiful dynamics that is there on the face of this earth. We don't even know we are doing this, but we are. And beyond paradise, we go to the most subtle nature of God. Giving life, we give life. Dispelling poverty, we dispel poverty. Dispelling injustice and establishing social justice, dispelling injustice and establishing social justice, we are doing all of these things in the nature of God. However, this is the outer motion, and it is inevitable for us to behave in this way. We are supposed to arrive at a ripened state of becoming the stewards of God on the face of this earth. As God nurtures, we too are expected to nurture. But in any case, that is the bodily facet and the bodily activity of the human existence. What about the other verse? لَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنْفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. We will indeed test you with a decrease of wealth, with fear, with anxiety, with death, and the cutting short of your produce or your children. Now at that point the verse says, فَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Give the glad tidings to those people who are persevering. When tribulations befall them, they cry out, indeed we belong to Allah and to Him we return. Now this is the inward motion. When the outer bodily is being snatched away, the inner being reverts to God and hands itself over to God. So there are two types of motion. One is the external motion through the mind, through the body, in which in the denial of God, we come to the fullness of the display of God within our own human existence. We become God-like. We become the we become the agencies of God. But in the inner world, when the outer world is being snatched away, when our produce doesn't yield, when our lives are being taken away, when we fall sick, when fear grips us, the inner being is supposed to tend meaningfully to God and to say, indeed, I belong to Allah and to Allah is my return. This is how the body and the spirited part are supposed to coexist simultaneously, both of them attaining their purpose. The body is supposed to defy limits, but the inner being is not supposed to be attached to the body. It defies limits through God. Internally, as the bodily is snatched away, we become more and more spirited from within. This is supposed to be the whole role of a human being within the worldly life. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the Quran says, مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I will ask us all to go and read the full verse. The full verse. The full verse is striking. It says, مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created humans and jinn, or jinn and human beings, save to do ibadah of me, which we want to qualify in a little while. Save to do ibadah of me. But the later part of the verse says, I do not want them to feed me, and I do not want them to sustain me. Allah is the sustainer. What a strange verse. I have not created jinn and man save to serve me. I do not want them to feed me. I do not want them to sustain me. Indeed, Allah is the sustainer. Look at the verse very carefully, reflect upon its content, and at some point we might analyze it. But according to this verse, what it means is that existentially the human being cannot help but serve God. Even if we did not want to, we are hardwired to serve God. at an existential level. The first part of the lecture where we explained that we cannot help but display God through our own humanness. God creates, we create. God makes paradise, we make paradise. God gives life, we give life. God dispels sickness, we dispel sickness. God feeds the hungry, we feed the hungry. Can you not see that? We are hardwired to be like God. And how can it be otherwise? He is our author. We can't help but display our author in our own constitution. But then this ibadah of God, which is an existential thing, whether we like it or not, is supposed to take on a very serious and a deeper meaning as far as we are concerned in terms of finding that deeper meaning that sustains our life, a meaningful life. Here now, as people of religion, we say we have to do ibadah. Now ibadah, if you look at ibadah in its original sense, it does not only mean worship. It does not only mean devotion, it means service. And that is why the human slaves are known as abd and abid. Because they are subservient. They serve the other one. Now if this ibadah is not understood accurately, then the return to God through serving God becomes a very bodily activity. As a slave serves the master, but the slave's mind is not in service of the master, nor is the slave's soul in service of the master. The slave's limbs are in service of the master. That is the first rank of ibadah, the bodily service. It would be very unfortunate if the community of faithful do not ascend beyond the service of the body. So praying namaz, fasting, performance of hajj, giving of zakat and khums, if it is interpreted as we are doing at present by and large, at the level of the body, then that defeats the purpose altogether, because what is yearning God is the light of God. It is not the body. The body is to fade away. But if our worship of God or our service of God is the bodily service, then it is no wonder that we spend 70 years worshiping God, and after 70 years we are still frightened people. It doesn't make sense, does it? That after 70 years of worship, I'm still afraid of death. That I'm still afraid of my sustenance for tomorrow. That I'm still afraid of illness and sickness. If the inner being has connected with God and has truly understood that I am from Allah and I am returning to Allah as the body and the body leaves me, I am on my onward journey to God. If that is understood, then we would not be afraid anymore, would we? If indeed we claim that Allah is our origin, our end, and He is the only one with whom we will find any rest, then why fear? Why anxiety? Why aspirations? You look at the human community. You can forgive the human community for being frightened individuals, for being disappointed, for being hopeless. But when we look at the community of the believers, to whom the Prophet has come, and to whom the Quran has come, and who have become acquainted with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for them to be so frightened at a ripe old age doesn't make sense. How can a believer be concerned with worldly wealth when they have tried to attain it, and if God has not destined it for them, why should they be preoccupied with it? Think about this very, very carefully. Who gives us air? Allah. Who gives us light? Allah. Who gives us water? Allah. Will our billions and trillions be able to create oxygen within the atmosphere? Will they be able to create a sun in the center of the solar system? Will they be able to send down merciful showers from the heavens? Look at how we are thinking. This service of God is a bodily service because we've interpreted God in an entirely bodily fashion. We are worshipping a bodily God. A bodily paradise is what we yearn. A bodily chastisement is what we fear. The real fear is the rejection of God. The real paradise is being united with the beloved. The bodily worship is therefore not yielding accurately in us finding our God. No wonder the Muslim is discriminatory. That the non-Muslim, the people who we consider as people worshipping idols, are going to go to hell. If we were in connection with the beloved, then that thought would not even occur to us. It is only because we are bodily. Now, if you look at our devotional practices, they are splendid. They are means for our arrival at God. But as opposed to that, they are not initiating the inner being in the understanding of God and in the beauty of God. They have become physical ends within themselves. So we find, we go to Hajj. Hajj means to intend God. We go to Hajj and we check our fatwa books as a tick box exercise to say, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and therefore my Hajj is executed. But then you ask yourself, did I find my God? Did I find Him? The answer is no. I went round the house, I ran between Safa and Marwa, I went in that scorching heat in which the mosquitoes devoured me. Then I threw stones at the shaitan and he threw 7 stones back at me. I've come back, I've done my Hajj. But your Hajj means to meet with Allah. Have you met with Allah? Is your heart contented now that you've arrived at your destiny? Are you ready to die now and meet with Him? Oh no, I went to Hajj to ask for a greater life, so I can go back to Hajj and do it all over again. This is when we reduce the devotion of God to the body. Now, the bodily ibadah is meant to be a discipline to awaken the mind. And the mind is supposed to trigger the inner soul. So what happens with the bodily ibadah is that the mind is forced to become attentive. When we talk about this riyadha, when the Arafa and the Sufi masters talk about disciplining the self, they say it's like tying the legs of an animal so that the animal becomes obedient and subservient and knows how to walk. This is what riyadha means, to train somebody. The body is trained in order to awaken the mind. So the first thing we need to do when we come to the level of inner devotion is to awaken to the one we are devoting ourselves to. Who are we devoting ourselves to? That's the first thing we need to awaken to. Who are we serving? And then when we say, okay, He is Allah, He is the one we are serving, then we will say, is He a master like any other master on the face of this earth? The answer is no. He is not. So does He need our physical prostrations and bowing and zakat and ruku and all of that? The answer is absolutely not. Even if the 8 billion people were to stop doing sajda to Him, it wouldn't make any difference to Him. And even if the 8 billion were to do sajdas, multiply infinitely, wouldn't make any difference to Him. Whether we like it or not, we are subservient to Him anyway. Whether we give a penny in His way or we don't, He's still going to feed everybody. How beautifully Hussein expresses the sentiment. He says, "O Allah, what sort of God are you that you give me before I ask? After giving me, you ask me to loan you a little bit of what you have given me. With a heavy heart, I give you something of what you have given me. With a smile, you accept it. Multiply it 70 times over and give it back to me." So the first thing we need to know is that God does not need these sajdas. He does not need this ruku. So the second thing we need to ask is, well, what does God want? When we look at God in the Quran, Allah says in Surah Al-Hajj, that this animal that you sacrifice, neither its blood nor its flesh, none of it is coming to God. What comes to God is that inner piety hidden within your hearts. That is what is coming to God. So what does God want? God wants me to turn to Him through those postures. Those postures are of no value in and of themselves. You perform the perfect sajda and stay there for 10 minutes. But if the mind is not awakened to God, the one to whom we are devoting ourselves, that posture is just a posture. How wonderfully has Imam Ali stated this, that there are so many people who stand tirelessly at night in the devotion of God, and the only thing they gain are swollen feet. And how many people spend daytimes in fasts of God, and the only thing they gain are empty stomachs. And people who recite Quran frequently, and the only thing they get is Quran cursing at them. This is when the object of devotion is not within the devotion. In order for the light of God to rejoin with God and the light of all light, it has to awaken to God. So the first thing we need to do is, in devotion, to awaken to God. And to ask ourselves, well, what is it that God wants through this prayer? He does not want the sajda, He does not want the ruku. What He wants is me, nobody else. He wants me to become attentive to Him. The Blessed Prophet said, when you pray, do so by knowing that Allah is watching you. And even if you can't understand that Allah is watching you, imagine that He is watching you. So that you become attentive to God, the inner being awakens. Because the whole point is for us to give ourselves away to God and to become detached from the body and the bodily. Now the interesting bit is that the namaz used to be 2 rakats, not 4 rakats. The Prophet added the other 2 rakats. And that is one of the reasons why when we travel, the 2 rakats that the Prophet added drop. And we are left with the 2 rakat minimum requirement that God wants initially. The question is asked then from one of the Imams, that why is this addition? The response comes that just in case you are not attentive in the first 2 rakat and you become a little bit attentive in the second 2 rakat, then that prayer is accepted. So the acceptance of the prayer is with our state of attentiveness with God. How awakened are we with God? And that's why we have this prelude of doing wudu, wearing nice clothes, perfuming ourselves, nice place. None of this are of any importance in and of themselves. These are preparatory stages in order to awaken the mind to the beloved. So that the beloved comes to the forefront of our minds and we begin to devote ourselves through the body to the one that is an object of our yearning. So the first thing in devotion is to know the one we are devoting ourselves to. If we were to know Allah, we say, Allah, you are the possessor of one and all. You are the most forgiving. You are the creator of paradise. So here then is initiated a primary relationship with God, that, oh Allah, I want to be freed from hell, and hence I worship you. I want to enter into your paradise, and hence I worship you. I want cure for my sickness, and hence I worship you. I want your bounties and your wealth, and hence I worship you. These therefore become the intentions where the mind and the heart has awoken to God. Once we awaken in this fashion, then we go deeper in forging this relationship with the beloved. But Allah, if you are indeed Allah, then you can forgive in any case, can't you? Why should I worship you through the fear of hell? I worship a God that is beyond vengeance and wrath. I worship you as you. Oh Allah, why have you created the paradise anyway? Would a parent want to withhold whatever they have from their children. Of course not. The parents take joy in giving whatever they have to their children. You by priority are parent of all parents. You will give me paradise even if I'm not worthy of it. Oh Allah, why should I worship you for the sake of paradise anyway? This is where that relationship of the individual begins to deepen with the object of devotion. We are still awakening to God. Then we worship God due to our anxieties and our fears and whatever else we have. The relationship with the one devoted to deepens even further. But oh Allah, when you are my God, why should I fear other than you? Rather than me telling you, oh Allah, dispel the threat of my enemy. Oh Allah, you are with me. Who cares whether my enemy comes and kills me or not when you are with me? If you have decided this for me, then indeed it is better for me. Now devotion starts becoming selfless. From a bodily devotion to the psychological devotion of selfish wants. From a psychological devotion of selfish wants becomes selfless devotion. It is deepening as we begin to know the one devoted to. Oh Lord, I'm with you. You are the greatest pride I have. Oh Allah, even if the whole world spits on my face, what difference does it make to me when you are with me? Oh Lord, you are the one who is to be known. I do not even want my name to be known anymore. The oblivion of not being known is far more desirable for me so that your name may be known. This is then the deepening of the relationship of the one we are devoting ourselves to. It is still at the level of the mind, but it is deepening at every state. Now, when we walk away from the practice of devotion, what happens is that the presence of God remains. When the presence of God remains, our wakeful life, sleeping life outside the mosque becomes a life with God. The biggest failure has been so far is that we find God inside the Kaaba. And He says, east and west, wherever you turn, I will be there. We run to the mosque to find God. He is saying, you only had to turn inward. I was always with you. How can I be confined to four walls? Even if it is the Kaaba, how can I be confined there? Think. Once we awaken with God. Then we walk with God. And we breathe with God. And we see with God. And God's presence becomes permanent. And then at that point, in that process of devotion to God, the words are monitored. The actions are monitored. The bodily becomes regulated. Once the bodily becomes regulated, where we earn, how we earn, what we say, if we lie, to withhold that lie. You know how as businessmen we do need to somehow embellish the truth when we are selling our product. You go often to the marketplace and you say, okay, cut the prices. And by God, I've bought it for this price and I'm only making 10 pence on it. Of course, it's a lie. We all know it. At that point, they will say, well, no, my God is with me. I can't lie. And whatever He has destined for me will come to me anyway. Imagine how beautiful the Islamic law system is if only we understood it. The Blessed Prophet said, when you take the price, take a little bit less. When you give the commodity, give a little bit more. Why? Because you're doing it for the sake of God. You are investing with God. And He will give you much, much more from where you don't even realize. But that should not be your motivation. Your motivation should be God Himself. So we begin to talk through God, walk through God, see through God. What happens there is that it begins to regulate our inner being. My anger, my rage, my pride. What will others think of me? What will others think of me? Have I ever seen myself on the stretcher when I have died? What others think of me? They will feel so sorry for me that this poor wretched soul has died with all his sins and is taking them back. That's what others will think of me. And then see how much the others matter. When I'm late to rest after a day or two, see how much they think of me. The appreciation of others is this. When a person awakens with God, the bodily fades away. It becomes God Himself. This is my wealth. People respect you for your wealth. They do not respect you. It is the money they respect. You don't mean anything. If this wealth were to change hands tomorrow, they will respect the new one. This is what your reality is. The eyes open up. The heart opens up. They respect you because of your position. You are a president today. Tomorrow you will be a nothing. And when you become ripe, old, and you begin to become senile, they'll laugh at you. Today they are in awe of you because of your arbitrary position. Tomorrow they'll be laughing at you and mocking at you and joking at you. Whatever they can't say today about you, tomorrow they will not withhold those words and they will direct them at you. This is what you are. The bodily is this. When we awaken with God, then the relationship with devotion of God, as God penetrates within the realms of the soul, becomes even finer and deeper. It even arrests the thoughts. That if I am devoted to God, then this attention, what God wants is me. He does not want my body, He wants me. I cannot think beyond God. Unworthy thoughts cannot be thought of. Finally, we begin to sever our ties with the body and with the bodily. As we begin to sever our ties with the body and the bodily, we begin to emerge in the light of Allah. How beautifully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the wonderful prophets. وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا وَوَحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ فِعْلَ الْخَيْرَاتِ وَإِقَامِ الصَّلَاةِ وَإِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ وَكَانُوا لَنَا عَابِدِينَ. And we made them the leaders who direct through our command and through our inspiration. And we inspire them the performance of righteous deeds, the establishments of prayer, and the giving of purity. And they were devoted to us. This khairat are the internal workings. The internal workings, they're all directed to God. Beautiful intentions, not going away from God. And then, once we immerse ourselves in these devotions, and the mind awakens to God, then we come to another rank. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala penetrates within our souls, we helplessly begin to yearn God. Why? Because before that point there is no rest, there is no peace, since the inner being has not properly awoken. Think about this carefully, what I'm going to say. Nobody can punish me more than I can punish myself. Because nobody knows what causes me the greatest fear. Only I know. Hell is for me to display my hellishness. I am the punishment. Even if there is a common place like hell, the punishment, its reception is contingent to the individual. Nobody knows how I experience greatest pleasure but me, myself. Even if we are all in the garden of paradise, the way we interact with that paradise is individualistic. Nobody can give me pleasure than more than I know myself. In that way, we are the paradise and we are the hell. Nobody can give us anything beyond what we can give to us. In the final analysis, we come to this point that until we are alienated to ourselves, we cannot find any rest. Now we draw our attention back to Ibrahim. Ibrahim arrives at the stage of an Imam, Nabi, Rasul, but he finds no rest. Because he has always been in search and in devotion of a God that is beyond him. It is only when he finally realizes that what he is searching for outside himself awaits reception from within himself. The final frontier is not to deny the bodily or the psychological being or the thoughts or the intentions. The final frontier is to deny the seeker himself. The one being sought for. So long as he is the other and being sought for and sought after, this is the point of alienation. And the motion does not come to a halt. Now we bring to mind yesterday's example again. لَهُمْ مَا يَشَاءُونَ فِيهَا وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيدٌ. For them is whatever they want therein, i.e. paradise, and we have more to offer. The Prophet was asked, what is this more that God talks about? The Prophet replies, and our Arafah quote this in their books, and some of them are grand ulama, that in paradise, God from time to time will give a glimpse of His divinity to the inhabitants of paradise. When He gives a glimpse of His divinity to the inhabitants of paradise, they will become inadvertent of paradise and its bounties. They will forget paradise and its bounties. They will become totally immersed within the radiance of the divine, the beauty and the splendor of God. And when God will move away His radiance, they will feel a sense of lack and unfulfillment within the depths of their hearts. Then they will live in paradise, yearning and in desire for the next glimpse from God. Who says paradise is the end? Paradise, the bodily paradise, means nothing to the light that is internally there. Even the paradise of the mind will not suffice. The hadith says anybody with an iota of ego within their soul will not enter into paradise. Even after removal of arrogance, if the heart has not yielded accurately to God, paradise shall become a place of restlessness. Although the people will rejoice in their paradise before God gives a glimpse of His beauty. But once God gives a glimpse of His radiance, paradise will become an unfulfilling place. When we come to this level in the devotion of the One, there then opens the door to the absolute level of devotion, where the devotee loses him or herself within the object of devotion, where the I-ness fades away, where I am no longer, I am not worshipping you for your paradise, neither for your hell, neither for popularity, neither for wealth, neither for your pleasure. I am worshipping you in order for you to remove me from myself. O Allah, end the game. Relieve me of myself. Part the final curtain. Destroy me. It is that destruction that we yield within the beloved in the final analysis. How beautiful are the souls that have been destroyed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How wonderful is Hussein. When he sees 30,000 swords, he cries out, O swords, await not, devour me. How beautifully he says in his whispered prayer, O God, even if these swords were to shred me into pieces, every drop of my blood that falls from my body will only yearn you. When this love deepens with the one being devoted to, language of love knows nothing but destruction. The lover always tries to melt away in the beloved. Always, without fail. We become like the object of our love. It can't be otherwise. We begin to emulate the one we love. We begin to look like them. We begin to speak like them. We begin to think like them. It is for this reason that the lovers of Hussein should be at the helm of humanity, because their master was at the helm of humanity. If anybody is a lover of Hussein and can hate anybody else, they should know that something has gone wrong in their love of Hussein. When we come to the language of love with the beloved, and then there is devotion, at that point there, the biggest problem and the hurdle is I. Oh Lord, remove me from myself and allow yourself to prevail. Imam Ali said, Hubbullah ma marra ala shay illa ihtaraq. The love of Allah does not pass upon anything but that it is burned to ashes. Such are the final levels of love when we begin to love God. So the devotion comes to a level where the beloved emerges from the depths of our souls and we fade away. Now we will quote these ahadith afterwards, in which God says, come near to me through my devotion to the extent that you become the eyes through which I see. You become the tongue through which I speak. You become the ears through which I hear. Come closer still, so that I become the eyes through which you see. I become the ears through which you hear, and I become the tongue through which you speak. Devotion, the fundamental goal of devotion, is to rid us of ourselves. Ridding us of ourselves means to rid ourselves of the bodily, to rid ourselves of this I-ness, to let it melt away in Allah, where then the light can prevail at the fullest extent. We come to the mention of the lover of Imam Hussein, Habib ibn Madahir. I have heard this from the Iranian scholars, that the Prophet was observing Imam Hussein playing with a group of children. And he looked and he said, bring that child to me. They brought the child. The Prophet began to shower affection upon the child and began to kiss the child. And he smiled. They said, Ya Rasulullah, why such show of affection for this one? He said, I used to see that he was walking with my Hussein in a way that he would not let my Hussein fall. He was guarding Hussein. He became his closest friend, Habib ibn Madahir. Imam Hussein, with his small band of people, are in Karbala. The army of Yazid is increasing. Lady Zainab finds no rest. She comes to her brother and she says, oh brother, do you not have anyone you can call upon to come for your aid, to your aid and for your assistance? He says to his sister, but who do I have in this wilderness? She said, you have your beloved companion Habib ibn Madahir. Imam Hussein writes a letter from Hussein ibn Ali to Habib ibn Madahir. Oh Habib, you know me well. As you get my letter, know that I am entrapped. Do not value your life over my life and hasten to my assistance. The letter is dispatched. There is a knock on the door of Habib in the depths of the night. Habib comes to his door and he says, who be at my door at this time? The response comes, the messenger of Hussein. He eagerly opens the door. As the letter of Hussein is handed, he puts it to his chest and he kisses it. He reads the content of the letter, then comes back. His wife asks, Habib, who was that? It was the messenger of Hussein. What does he ask? He asks for my assistance. And what have you said? What do you decide? So Habib looks at her in order to test her, and he says to her, but you are old and alone. Who will look after you? She says, Habib, sorrow be your lot. Shall Hussein be killed and you be spared? Shall Hussein's women be taken as captive and your wife enjoy your protection? Go, Habib, await not. Habib sends his servant ahead of him to wait at the borders of Kufa. As Habib secretly tries to exit Kufa, he meets with Muslim ibn Awsaja. Muslim has bought some henna to dye his beard with. He asks Habib, why do you leave Kufa in the depth of the night? He said, Hussein is trapped in Karbala and he seeks our help. And he throws the color and he says, Muslim throws the color and says, by God, I will have this white beard colored with my blood in the love of Hussein. As Habib comes to the borders of Kufa, his servant talks to the horse and the steed. He says, O steed, worry not. If your master does not appear, I will ride you and we will go to Karbala in the assistance of Hussein. Habib looks at his servant and says, I free you in the way of Allah. He said, Habib, if you free me, then allow me to accompany you to Karbala. They set off towards Karbala. Imam Hussein hands over the standards of the army, but he keeps one to himself. Everybody is desirous for that standard. Imam does not give it to anybody. He says, the bearer of this standard is soon to arrive. From afar they see rising dust raised by the galloping of a horse. Imam smiles and said, this is he. Habib appears. He looks at Hussein. He says, O Hussein, even though I have become old and I have withered away, as soon as I see you, youthful blood begins to flow within my veins. There is commotion in the camp of Hussein. Lady Zainab asks, why is there this joy and commotion? Habib, Hussein's childhood friend, has come. Zainab sends her salutations. When Habib hears the salutation, he cries out, he says, for helplessness, that you are trapped in this wilderness. The battle commences. Abu Thumama comes to Imam Hussein and he says, O Hussein, it is time for Dhuhr prayers. Imam Hussein looks at the sky and he says, you have reminded me of prayers. May Allah raise you with the people who uphold their prayers. Imam said, ask them for respite so that we may attend to our prayers. Habib comes to Imam and he says, O Hussein, I wish to pray these prayers behind your grandfather. Allow me to fight with your enemies. Hussein says, Habib, so be it. Habib mounts an attack. He says, even though I am old, yet my sword shall not hesitate in tearing you into pieces in the defense of my Imam. Habib is surrounded. He is brought to the ground. When Habib tries to stand, a sword is struck upon his blessed head. As the sword is struck upon him, he cries out, O Hussein, peace be with you. Hamid ibn Muslim says that I saw hopelessness on the face of Hussein that I have not seen before that time. Hussein runs to the body of Habib and he says, O Habib, do you leave me? Habib breaks into a smile. He says, O Hussein, this is your grandfather. He quenches me with the goblets of Kawthar and says to me to tell you, O Hussein, await not, hasten to me, for I eagerly await you. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. إلهي إن نسألك بحق الحسين وجده وأبي وأمه وأخيه وتسعة المعصومين من ذريته وبنيه. ماتم يا حسين.
Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. करते थे सरवर बुका.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Spirit of Hussein, guide us through your way. In every trial we face, to reach God in your way. Oh, lonely hearts, broken by the pain. Oh, every tear calls out Hussein's name. Every single tear reminds us of Hussein's name. Every tortured face holds a sacred place. Every tortured face holds a sacred place. Spirit of Hussein, guide us through your way. In every trial we face, to reach God in your way. O tearful ones, can you see the babe? Can you see his smile? Witness for a while. Can you see your sons born unto your wives? Can you hear their cries? See tears in their eyes? Can you imagine then never seeing them again? This was our Hussein, Ali Asghar was his pain. This was our Hussein, Ali Asghar was his pain. Spirit of Hussein, guide us through your way. In every trial we face, to reach God in your way. Oh, our sweet Abbas, where are your sacred hands? Where are your shining arms, plundered upon the sands? Where is your valiant heart? Where is your sword so sharp, to quench the thirst of the pure? Courageous you surely were, to quench the thirst of the pure. Courageous you surely were. Spirit of Hussein, guide us through your way. In every trial we face, to reach God in your way. O daughter of Haydar, your sweetheart bears the scars. O beloved of Batul, you felt their hate so cruel. O sisters in Islam, imagine yourselves in Sham. Imagine the pain and hurt displayed for the cursed hurt. From the gaze of man your God, though the way is always hard. You're the heirs of sweet Zainab, to safeguard our hijab. We're the heirs of sweet Zainab, to safeguard our hijab. Spirit of Hussein, guide us through your way. In every trial we face, to reach God in your way. Salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
العالمين. السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا أم البنين. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى أخيك أبا الفضل العباس وأختك زينب الحوراء أم المصائب وأم كلثوم وبنتك سكينة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا زين العابدين سيد الساجدين. السلام عليك يا باقر العلم النبيين الأولين والآخرين. السلام عليك يا جعفر صادق المصدق. السلام عليك يا موسى كاظم الباب الحوائج. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء وبعيد المدى. السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وأنيس النفوس المدفون بأرض توس. أيها الرضا الراضي بالكدر والقضاء مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليك وعلى أختك المعصومة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا محمد التقي الجواد. السلام عليك يا علي النكي الحادي. السلام عليك يا حسن العسكري الزكي. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجن. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك ورزقنا الله في الدنيا زيارتك وفي الآخرة شفاعتك. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد.
We will be starting the Q&A very shortly, straight away, apologies. Just a reminder to please send any questions to sheikhrf.com/live. Please can we welcome Sheikh with the salawat. You said that we had made a pledge to Allah before coming here, but the question still remains, why did Allah create us in the first place before we came to earth?
You see, it's a phenomenal question, because no matter how you explain it, it goes back. Well, why? Well, why? Well, why? In the final analysis, we have to end and to say, it is nothing but the display of God Himself. The display of one untarnished beauty and reality itself. Yep. So, if we can just understand that it's that overwhelming I am, It's God's eye that is awakening in all of us, and it's crying out in all of us. I don't know how many cycles it's taken, from whence it's arisen, where it will end. It's a huge mystery. All we know is a constant search to rejoin with that origin and to fade away, to explore who I am. Yeah. It's a phenomenal question, that is.
Salam, you mentioned there are different levels of Qiyamah. Could you please share your knowledge on this? Thank you very much.
So, when we look at the religious literature, we find that there were other species prior to us coming on the face of this earth, but they experienced their Qiyamah. So they've been dealt with. They've gone and other species have come, and they've gone and others have come. So in that way, many different human type species are coming, performing their roles and going away. On the other hand, you have the description of Qiyamah within the Quran that talks about the mountains crumbling, where there'll be biharu fujirat, when the seas will explode, and إِذَا وَالشَّمْسُ وَجُمِعَتِ الشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ, another that description of Qiyamah, when the sun and the moon will become joined, where then نُجُومُ طُمِسَتْ, and when the stars will disappear, or مَوَاقِعُ النُّجُومِ, and وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةِ and قَارِعَةِ. We are finding that there's a cosmic level of Qiyamah as well. The Qiyamah of species, the Qiyamah of the solar system, the Qiyamah of maybe the galaxy and the cosmos in which we have existed. كَمَا بَدَأْنَا وَلَا خَلْقٍ نُعِيدُهُ. As we initiated the initial creation, we will cause it to reverse and revert. So we find the cosmic Qiyamah. And then we find a beautiful expression of Qiyamah within Nahjul Balagha, in which he talks about nothing remaining, absolutely nothing remaining, and the cry from the divine, لِمَنِ الْمُلْكَ الْيَوْمِ, whose is the kingdom on this day? And the response is from he himself, لِلَّهِ وَحِدِ الْقَهَّارِ, for Allah, the one, the overpowering. So there are a variety of levels of Qiyamah. Now, one of the descriptions of Qiyamah is سَعِكَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, and when that hour comes, or when that trumpet is blown, everyone within the heavens and the earth shall fall, apart from those God wills. So there are exceptions being made here. And then there's a level of Qiyamah in which there is no exception. Yeah? In which, of course, in the hadith descriptions we have that the Hamilin of Arsh will also fade away, the Malakul Maut will also die, everybody will just be wiped out.
If there is nothing other than God, where do we go if we don't go to God after we die?
Where what?
Where do we go if we don't go to God after we die?
See, our return is nowhere but to God. So long as we have not faded away in God, obviously we are still in the process of fading away in God. Yes? So if you look at the description of hell, لَابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا, staying in hell for lengthy periods of time. Obviously they are purged from their egos and their arrogance and their sin. Sin means the I-ness. I-ness is the sin. I-ness is the veil. That is the biggest demon that is there. We're going to talk about it over the next few days. And until we are not relieved of that, we do not experience the already pre-existing union with God. So if we don't go to God, we still go to God in terms of the process of finding God, even if that be within hell. Now there is a hadith that the Sufis quote, but I do understand that the Muhaddithin would have a difficulty with this, and that is that eventually God will forgive Shaitan himself. Yeah? It's a hadith from the Prophet.
What are the practical advices and application to work on the ego? How do we overcome it?
I think what the Blessed Prophet said. He said, think of death often. Keep that as a yardstick. It will do away with arrogance. It will do away with possessions. It will do away with prestige. It will do away with enmity. It will not spare anything. Think frequently about death and what happens at that point. That loneliness, state of helplessness, and the terror that comes upon the individual when they find that they're going to a place in which they have no control. They have no ownership. They have no friends. And the way they have behaved in this world may become a huge burden for them to bear. When they wrong others, it's a burden. When they behave in arrogance, it's a burden. When they want the appreciation and validation of each other, it's a burden. So think of that. It is sufficient to bring the mind into focus. The Prophet advised this.
The question: How can we rid of ourselves of the ego and forgive the ones who have hurt us, especially toxic people? Did the Prophet not forgive but also avoid these people?
So there is one thing. If one thing is forgiveness and the other thing is being wise. So when people wrong us, we feel hurt. But if we are unable to let it go, then we are holding that hurt within us. As we hold that hurt within us, the ego becomes more constricted. The I-ness prevails. And that becomes the veil from God. So when somebody wrongs us, it is an opportunity for us to forgive, to break the ego and the I-ness. But when we hold it in our hearts, that wrong that they did becomes a wrong that we perpetuate within ourselves. Hating, having ill feelings, not being able to forgive. This is then punishing the self by the self. So if we were wise people, we would know that actually that act of hurt in the first instance was an opportunity for me to let go of my ego, an opportunity from God for me to break and love the enemy. But what happened was that opportunity came and I have converted it into something quite demonic. So Allah gave me wealth in order to live and to cater for the creatures of God. What I have done is, I have begun to hoard it. So that wealth was an opportunity, it's now become a damnation for me. So that hurt that came to me was an opportunity for me to break my ego. But I have reinforced the ego by holding it in. That wrong that the initial person did was nothing. The real wrong is what I am doing to myself. Yes? That would then make us wise to let it go. However, once we let go of the hurt and we forgive, we know that person has certain tendencies with which I can't cope. And it really annoys me or irritates me or offends me. So in that case, you can be streetwise and keep your distance. So you can forgive and still keep a distance until you become mature enough and strong enough to then remove the distance, but when you feel you can control yourself. But all of this has to be done with a very clean, genuine, godly intention.
What is the difference between God and us? Are we not the same?
So, because there is this sense of God as God and me as me. I am not the mountain, I am not the birds, I am not the trees, I do not feel I am the 8 billion people around, then that is the huge difference. That the ocean as the ocean and the wave and the ripple as the wave and the ripple. That is the difference. For us to claim we are something is a false statement because we are not. We have to claim He is. And for Him to prevail, we have to relent and let ourselves go. But we do not become Him. We merely allow Him to claim His own glorious self. So I'll give that analogy again. The wave, no matter how momentous the wave is, it can never be the ocean. Once it relents and becomes calm and fades away in the ocean, it will never be able to claim, I am the ocean. It will always be the ocean that claims, I am. Basically, the motion of my finger cannot claim that it is me. Yeah?
We will finish the Q&A for today. Again, a reminder, refreshments will be at the back. Please can we recite a surah